Okay, so I am Griffin Day, and I'm one of the attorneys at KC Elder Law, and I am here talking to Courtney, who is the Director of Operations at Carehaven Homes. How are you, Courtney?
I'm great. Thank you, Griffin. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, absolutely. And so really the kind of the purpose of our discussion today is just to talk a little bit about kind of memory care, which is what, something that you're an expert in, and then also just kind of long-term care in general, because I mean,
Sure.
there's a lot, as people find out, there's really a lot that goes into it.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I think similar to elder law, like when I see clients, I mean, we definitely help people that have waited too long, but it's so much better if you can have these conversations and, in the best case, like really get your documents in place, like wills, advance directives, trusts, before you really need to, because the truth is, by the time you really need a long-term care facility placement like tomorrow,
Yes.
it's kind of like, it's saying I need a will tomorrow. It's,
Yeah.
it, we could make it happen, but it's just a lot easier on the family and a lot easier on everyone if you start that process sooner rather than later.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. It's not something that people want to talk about. You don't want to think of it. So you kind of just push it off. And then unfortunately a crisis happens. And at that point in the crisis, you either pick a facility maybe that you end up not being happy with, or financially, by not including you guys, it will be so much more stressful, unorganized. So yeah, it's something that I'm so glad you're doing this, because it'll bring awareness, I hope, to folks about being organized and planning ahead of time and really doing your homework when it comes to long-term care facilities, because there are luckily so many amazing choices specifically in the Johnson County area. Oh, I should say Kansas City metro area. There's lots of choices
Yeah,
compared to even just a few years ago.
definitely. And people, I mean, I think a lot of people don't realize that placement is really kind of an industry in itself. Like,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of people who they really specialize, all kinds of companies who specialize in matching people to these facilities, because they know that, like you said, people don't talk about it, and there's just so many factors that go into it, and money. I think money is a huge one,
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I'm sure that you've talked to even more people than I have who just get sticker shock when they hear these prices, because they're, if you're outside the kind of the community, the industry, to us it's normal, but I think kind of the average person who maybe hasn't had an experience with a loved one in long-term care, it can really be shocking.
Absolutely. Yeah. And sadly, the pandemic these last couple years has made it even more expensive, because we're having to pay nurses and caregivers even more than we ever have. And things like um, gloves and incontinence supplies have doubled in price. So absolutely, it's the age old plan, plan, plan. You can't plan enough. And I always tell people, everybody gets scared of the nursing home. Don't ever put me in a nursing home. Well, things
Right.
are so much different. And I think caregivers often, statistics show, they're sadly the ones who pass away before the actual person with the disease, or with whatever's going on health wise, because they pretty much just care for that loved one as long as they can at home, and then it puts such stress on their health that they end up passing away. So but if this caregiver would open their mind to looking at long-term care options, because things are so much better, that's not your typical nursing home anymore. There's options like Carehaven, where I work, and beautiful other assisted living, memory care, long-term care facilities.
Definitely. And I think that scenario that you just said, where, people wait too long, is a great example of, a road that's paved with good intentions, but like you said, there's not a good ending.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so kind of another question that people ask me all the time, and I'm sure again you get this all the time too, is what is memory care?
Sure.
Like what does that mean?
Yeah. So memory care is usually one step between assisted living and long-term care. Although a lot of folks stay in memory care and never need to go to long-term care. But memory care, I would say specifically, our staff are trained to know how to deal with and communicate effectively with somebody with dementia. So um, it's not just long-term care. It's more where the caregivers know how to get somebody to bathe. It's more, how to address when somebody's having a challenging behavior like refusing to take meds. But it still is 24 hours a day care, helping with activities of daily living, bathing, dressing, grooming, medication management. But also, it's not just that physical aspect. Our folks with dementia really need that emotional piece because they may have extra anxiety. They may develop a thing called sundown syndrome, which is, later in the day, they start to get antsy and anxious because they feel like, oh, I have to get home to my children. My children are getting coming from school, getting off the bus, and you have to really give them a lot of emotional TLC and redirection to calm down. So yeah, memory care, if your loved one has dementia and you need to move them from home is the way to go. However, sometimes folks do have physical needs or physical diagnoses where they may need long-term care. Prime example of that would be if you're a diabetic and you need insulin. Like where I work specifically, we don't have nurses on site 24 hours a day, and you really need a nurse on site for that. So it also depends on the facility and what they offer, but memory care is a newer thing, a newer concept that I think is wonderful for the community.
Definitely. And that's another factor kind of that goes into the placement process is like you said, and some places don't have the, either the staff or, they don't accept people with certain behavioral problems or certain conditions. So, I think that's just another reason why you want to start early so that you're not just taking the first open door, basically, which,
Yeah.
and I mean, not to say that you couldn't find a great place at the last minute, but, it's set yourself up for success, I guess.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. The other thing I didn't mention about memory care too, Griffin, is, they're safe and secure and locked, because that's the reason why a lot of folks have to move them from home, is because they may get out the front door and get lost in the neighborhood, or, gosh, it's so hard when people have to take away the car keys.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. So a memory care facility compared to like assisted living is locked and secure, and usually they have a nice courtyard or backyard area where the folks can go.
And that security is, I mean, especially now with the snow and it getting cold and stuff, it's definitely scary to think about, if you have a loved one with dementia that's not in a secure facility.
Yes, exactly.
And then, yeah, I mean, the other thing that I think we kind of touched on as kind of a reason to start early is the family dynamics that I think are always there. In every single case, there is some kind of, emotional struggle, no matter how clear it is that the situation is unmanageable. It can still be hard for family members to put that person in a facility to get them the kind of care that they need.
Yeah. Yeah. If families, if somebody is diagnosed with dementia, if they can have those talks with their loved one as soon as possible, because then you can go to you all, get it all in writing, their end of life wishes, and then it takes away those arguments. Because I've seen it time and time again where families, siblings, I mean, it causes a rift in the family where they no longer speak because, no, I want mom to have a feeding tube. No, mom would never want a feeding tube. Well, if they had come to you all and gotten everything laid out legally, there's no discussion. There's no fight amongst them. Still maybe hard feelings, but there's no fight because
Yeah.
it's written there and that discussion was had. And so that's, yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, it's so true. And I mean, this is just kind of anecdotal, of course, but I feel like more often than not, if there isn't a plan in place beforehand, it causes some kind of family tension from, just disagreements up to and including, like you said, where, long-term rifts or someone, moving across state lines and quitting their job and taking FMLA, and then, a kind of a struggle develops where, mom's talking to this person and this other person doesn't know where she is. And it's just, it's can all be avoided.
Yeah. Yeah. And as we've talked about earlier, the cost of long-term care is so expensive. And so that's a big reason why a lot of families fight. So if you all have done, the family has done Medicaid planning specifically with you all too, we haven't talked numbers yet, but long-term care now and memory care can run anywhere from, gosh, I want to say, and this is probably here specifically in Johnson County, but 6,000 up to 12,000. There's a wide range a month, 6 to 12,000 a month. And so if families have planned for this, then it again causes less arguments down the road. A lot of times people will gift money, and it just gets so sticky, so sticky. So yeah.
Especially when you've got a person who's like downsizing, selling their house, and then a lot of people at that point want to gift money to relatives, which, as we know, causes huge problems if Medicaid ever enters the picture. And then, like you said, those high prices, even someone who I think the average person would consider to be very wealthy still needs to ask themselves this question: how are we going to cover 12,000 a month? And people, it is super difficult to talk about. Just like what you want to happen to your money after you die is a really difficult topic. So is what you want your family to do, how you want them to handle the situation where you can't live on your own anymore. You can't live with a family member.
Wouldn't you agree, Griffin, too, that there's a way to, and because you guys are the experts on this, not me, there's a way, that there's that sticker shock of 12,000 a month. There's a way that they can work with you all to plan to direct assets in the way that they want them to go, so that it doesn't all go to a nursing home or long-term care facility. Am I correct in that statement?
Absolutely. Yeah. That is a big part of our practice, especially as it relates to long-term care planning, is looking at somebody's full financial picture, because it really is different every time. And say, this is how you can save the most money possible, and put yourself in the best position possible to get the best care, for as long as you need it. That way you're not struggling to say, what can I afford? It's, what are our options and which one are we going to take? For most people, this is the first time that they've done this, usually it's the only time that they're gonna do it. But versus us and our staff, this is what we do every day, all day long. So it's, people come all the time and they say, it's such a mess. Like we waited way too long. We know it's too late, and it's maybe it's not. Usually it's too late. I would say, really. And we can say, calm down. Let's take a look at the balance sheet here and then see what we can do.
Yeah. Because sometimes you can't avoid the crises. Unfortunately, I'm sure you see it. The spouse suddenly passes away. That was the caregiver. So sometimes things are unforeseen. So we are both here, no matter if somebody does pre-plan or don't, but we recommend pre-planning.
Exactly. Yes. And avoid the situation where, the spouse that handles everything is the one that's gone, and then we're all kind of struggling to pick up the pieces.
Absolutely.
It happens, life happens, but like you said, pre-planning it is better than not.
Yeah. And there's other options around town as far as elder law attorneys. But what I really love about KC Elder Law is you guys have that established reputation and have been around for a long time. And that's so important, because you guys do stay up to date on the current laws surrounding Medicaid and that kind of thing. So, and I say that about where I work, Care Haven, you can find less expensive memory care, but what happens is we provide better care, and you guys provide better advice and legal services that end up, I think, saving you two things: stress and headache, and money in the long run. Maybe more expensive up front, but it's going to save you more on the back end.
Absolutely. And it's, and a lot of times it's, in your case, it might be time that you can't get back, and in our case, money that you can't get back. So it's, like you said, yeah, it's important to pick the right option first, or the right one for you.
Yep.
So circling back to memory care and factors that, that go into placement, could you talk a little bit about the different licenses that are required to serve different kinds of populations? And then a little bit, Carehaven has a unique, I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, Carehaven has a unique business model. So if you could kind of discuss a little bit about that, I think our viewers would be interested.
Yeah, absolutely. So independent living, I think a lot of folks have heard, but that is where folks go that are still, quote, independent and can do a lot. There's a lot of amenities at those facilities. Those are actually not licensed. Some people don't realize that they are not licensed by the state or federally. So that's the first kind of your lowest level. And then from there, you have assisted living, and it is assisted living license. For Kansas, you can do a lot of care in, or have and provide a lot of care in assisted living, but I will say it does vary on the facility. Some facilities will cap assisted living where, they will only do so much as if somebody starts to become incontinent, they won't do incontinence care, or if they can no longer transfer using one person, then you'll have to move to a higher level of care. But assisted living provides, meals, housekeeping, and then assistance with the daily living activities. And then you have memory care. Memory care doesn't have its own license. That's just describing the type of care. But typically, memory cares are either licensed. Most of them, I would say almost all of them, are licensed as assisted living. And then you have what I do, which is our homes are licensed in Kansas as Home Plus. And we provide care in an actual residential home. And we have staff that work 24 hours a day, do shifts, they don't live in. And then we have nurses that visit. And so it's very similar to assisted living, but because it's in an actual home, it's a different license. Then there's the skilled nursing homes that you've heard of, and those are federally regulated. So again, assisted living and memory cares and Home Plus, like what I do, are all regulated by the state. So skilled nursing, they can provide the highest level of nursing and care services. So you'll see folks straight out of the hospital will usually go to skilled nursing homes if they've broken a hip or have pneumonia. They'll go to a skilled nursing. And the one thing that I want to touch on that folks get confused about is there are short-term and long-term stays in skilled nursing homes. Short-term would be like if someone broke a hip and they were in the hospital, they go there so that they can get some short-term rehab, some intensive therapy, PT, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech. And during that short-term rehab stay at the skilled nursing, that is where Medicare and insurance can pay for the stay. So a lot of times people will say, well, will my medical insurance pay for long-term care? Only when it's that short-term stay, and they have to have some sort of medical reason for it. It can't just be, well, mom's getting difficult to care for at home, we're going to move her to skilled. That has to have something where they were hospitalized. And then also the long-term care, again, in a skilled nursing home, is where either private funds or Medicaid will come into play and pay. And we haven't talked about like long-term care insurance policies. Some long-term care insurance policies will cover long-term care in skilled nursing homes or assisted livings. Again, you just have to check your policy on that. But yeah, your skilled nursing homes provide the highest level of care. If they have deep wounds, if they have severe heart issues, have feeding tubes. But to further confuse everyone, again, there's a different licenses, but you really just have to dig in deep when you're investigating facilities of moving your loved ones, because the licenses, assisted living and skilled, do allow for some variation. So that's why you may see one assisted living that doesn't allow your loved one to be in a wheelchair. You can drive down the street and see that another assisted living does allow your loved one to be in a wheelchair. So it does just depend on the facility, but it's great to ask lots of questions when you're investigating to find out, because another thing I hear a lot of feedback on is people get frustrated. Well, their loved one gets a notice that they have to move out. Well, I didn't know that they couldn't stay if they became a 2-person transfer. That's a thing that a lot of assisted livings don't do, and we do at Carehaven Homes. Is we will take folks that need 2 caregivers to transfer them from, say, a bed to their wheelchair. So make sure you ask that question. What is something that would enable my loved one to have to move out of this facility to a higher level of care?
That is such a great question. We should honestly, we'll add that probably to some of our material somewhere, because that is such a great question to ask.
Yeah.
Um,
And behaviors, not to interrupt you, Griffin, but behaviors is a big thing as well. Sadly, folks with dementia develop certain behaviors, whether it's anxiety or aggressive behaviors. And so different facilities can and can't handle that. I know at Carehaven, where I work, we can handle a certain level, but there are facilities that specialize in that around town that can handle, sadly, when someone has behaviors related to their dementia.
Yeah, I mean, like we were saying before, is that those kind of behavioral changes, I think those tend to be kind of the cases where placement is needed sooner rather than later. So asking those questions is, if you're, unfortunately, if you're in that situation, that's something you, again, should start doing sooner rather than later, to find the facility that's the right match for all, because you've got an extra factor there.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I mean, how can people contact you to find out more about you and more about Carehaven?
Yeah. They can go to our website, which is carehavenhomes.com. My office number's on there as well. It's 913-643-0111. 7 days a week, we have somebody responding to inquiries. But yeah, we are available. And I'm also, as many people in this industry, you'll find if we end up not being a good solution for somebody, we all are so helpful in recommending other places and steering folks in the right direction. But yeah, that's the best way to get a hold of us. And thank you for asking that.
Yeah, absolutely. And going off of what you said, we're the same way. If for whatever reason, we are not the right fit for someone, or they need a service that we don't offer, it is, it's a very, I would say, holistic industry where we really are about helping people. So we're always, referring and kind of just discussing options with people.
Yeah.
And KC Elder Law, we have 3 locations. We've got the Northland, we got Overland Park, and then Lee Summit. And you can call us. We do free consults, 913-338-5713. And thank you so much, Courtney, for talking to me.
Thank you, Griffin, for having me, and have a good rest of your day. And thanks everybody for watching us. Hope you learned something.
Exactly. Thanks again.
Yep.